and we are live on your favorite learning channel. It is channel 319. I go by the name of Pumi, and joining me today, guys, it is Seema. Hello, Seema.
Hi, Pumi. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm well. Are you ready to talk all about love today?
Yes, yes.
And the famous love story of all times, Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, great. Wow, guys, if you would love to participate, please make sure that you like us on Facebook, and please get your friends to get their friends to like us on Facebook so that we can interact with our teacher, Seema. This is where you can post all of your questions or comments and everything like that on mindset.co.za/learn/winter school. All right. And one another exciting thing that we have for you guys at home is this awesome CD. It is from Soul Candy. So what you have to do is just to enter our competition right there on mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock. All right, what you have to do is just to choose any number between 0 and 9 according to the number of likes that we have on Facebook. Later on a little bit on the show, I will be explaining the game, and we'll be having some posts on Facebook where you can actually get to fill in this form that you have to fill in order for you to enter that number that you want to have. It is C9 CD. I'm sure you guys at home really do want it. And at the end of today's show, we are going to be giving away this nice CD bag where you can store all your CDs all you want. So basically what happens is all of the winners that we had, all of the people that we had earlier on, the mindsetters that we had earlier on the draw, will have their names in the nice little box where we're going to have a draw, and then they can get to win this nice CD bag. But right now though, let's just get straight to learning.
Yes, thank you, Pumi. Well, with all that liking, let's get now back to loving. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
For all of you guys that are writing the English first additional language paper, remember your literature paper is a 2-hour paper, and you have a choice of 2 questions that you have to answer for this exam. Today we're going to focus on Romeo and Juliet, and we're going to start off with the extracts, and thereafter go on to the contextual questions, and furthermore, if we have some time, Pumi, we'd like to look at the essay question. Okay, so let's start with question 2. Okay, we must first remember that we need to first read the extract at least 3 times so that we are well aware of where the extract comes from, right? Remember, the paper will give you a few indications. You will have this here that says Tybalt has recognized Romeo at the Capulet ball. So this gives you an indication of where the extract comes from, right? You're putting it, you're contextualizing it. Thereafter, they give you the text where you have Tybalt and Capulet who are talking to each other at the ball, and then at the end here you will find Act 1, Scene 5, right? That also helps you with contextualizing the extract and figuring out where the extract comes from. Now, if you look at the extract here, it's a speech between Tybalt and Lord Capulet at the ball. Now, we are currently in Act 1, Scene 5, so we need to figure out what happened before this and what happened after this. If you think about what happened before this, you must remember that Lord Capulet meets with Paris, who he sees as a promising son-in-law for his, well, obvious daughter, Juliet. Now, here, Paris is invited to this ball, and Capulet is happy about him getting together with Juliet and hopefully them getting married at the end of it, right? But unfortunately, things don't always turn out the way we plan. Okay, getting now down to the questions, right? The first question: Romeo and his friends attend the Capulet ball for different reasons. Write down these reasons. Now, sometimes we have to read a question more than once in order to understand what's being asked. So let's go and look at it again, right? We're looking at Romeo and his friends, right, who attend the Capulet ball for different reasons, right? So we know that they're all attending this ball for different reasons. But what are these reasons? Now, if we think back right before the ball, we find that there's a servant that approaches Romeo and asks Romeo to please read, as he could not read, the list of the guest list for him. And this is how Romeo and his friends become familiar that there will be a ball. Now, if we go to the answers, right? And we look at it. Oops. There. Oh, did I do something? Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we find his friends want him to see other young women so that he can forget about Rosalind, right? And he hopes to see Rosalind because he obviously wants to show his friends how beautiful she is. Now, these are two different reasons. It's very important to note that the question expects different reasons, right? Okay. And you know, if you were to say something like his friends wanted him to meet different women at the ball, and then you go on to say that Romeo wants to meet different people, obviously you would be contradicting yourself and the answers won't be right. Okay, so the first answer is very straightforward. It actually expects you to know what the text is all about, where the text comes from, before and after, right? So moving on to the next question. What characteristics of tie belts are shown in this extract? Now let's read the question again, right? Okay. What two characteristics of tie belt are shown in this extract? Characteristics are traits, your character traits, you know, whether you are loving, whether you are caring, whether you are aggressive, whether you are angry. What type of characteristics do you have? How would you define yourself? That's basically what the question is asking. So when we look at what two characteristics of tie belts are shown in this extract, remember we are being referred to the extract, so we cannot go out of the extract and find situations where tie belt did something else and give him some other things, right? Remember, we must constantly refer to the extract. Now, in the extract, we find that tie belt, right? He's short-tempered, he's easily angered, he's aggressive, he loves fighting, he's violent, right? I want to take you back to the extract very quickly, and I want to show you something that tie belt says, right? If you look here, you see that tie belt recognizes Romeo, and then he goes on to say, where am I? There we go, here. Now by the stock and the honor of my kin, to strike him dead I hold not a sin. That in itself tells you that tie belt is an aggressive man who would kill without thinking about it, and he wouldn't even feel bad about it, right? So the text very clearly tells us that tie belt is an aggressive guy who likes, he's short-tempered. You see, he sees Romeo, he gets angry and he wants to kill him immediately, you know, without even giving it a second thought, all because he is not a Capulet and because he is part of the opposing family. Right, we go on to the next question. What is an antiface? What is the antiface that tie belt refers to in line 3? Now read the question again. What is, right, let's just look at it again. The question is what is an antiface. Now this antiface is coming out of the extract, okay, that tie belt refers to in line 3. Remember, Shakespearean language is not straightforward. It's not something that we are familiar with. Something they would call an antiface, we call a mask, right? So remember this. We need to understand the Shakespearean language, but the hints are there, an anti-face, something that covers your face. It's a mask, right? Now you must also remember in these days and times when there was a ball, people were allowed to wear fancy costumes and dress, and sometimes there was a theme and whatever the case is. But the mask was always there for the males and the females. They used the masks and they covered their faces. It's sort of to create a sort of you know, a surprise, an element of surprise that you may not recognize the person you're actually speaking to, right? And if we go further on, Capulet does not want fighting at the ball, right? That is straightforward. It's a statement. It says Capulet does not want fighting at the ball, right? The first question A, right? Give 2 possible reasons why Capulet feels this way. Now it's asking us for 2 reasons why Capulet feels this way. Please remember, when you are answering these type of questions where there's more than one question, remember it starts with a statement, Capulet does not want fighting at the ball, and then it moves on to questions, right? You must remember that if you are answering a question like this, you must make sure that you are answering it according to the numbering system. So you would obviously go 2.4a, right? And So give two possible reasons why Capulet feels this way. Now Capulet is becoming an old man, he's aging. And he doesn't want, you know, this type of thing. And he's obviously throwing this ball. If he's hosting it, obviously the host wouldn't like anything to go wrong at his function. Okay? But let's go to the answers and see what we find there. Alright? Here we find that Capulet wants to impress Paris, who is present at the ball. Now why would he want to impress Paris? Because he sees Paris as a very promising son-in-law, and he would like Paris to marry Juliet, right? And then the prince, Aeschylus, has forbidden fighting. If you remember very early in the play, we find the play actually starts with the two servants of the Capulets and the Montagues fighting, where there's a squabble over something, and then the prince comes there and he says that, you know what, this is enough. The society's fed up with you guys, and you need to either decide whether you want to stay in peace or fight. And if you do decide to continue fighting, then obviously he would take action and throw them in prison or have them killed or whatever the case is, right? So that's one of the reasons why Capulet would want peace at his party, because now Romeo, he knows, is a Montague and the son of the enemy. And if the son of the enemy is killed at his party or his ball, obviously that would be a crime that he would be accused of, that would result in him being banished or killed or imprisoned or whatever the case is, right? So he has mentioned earlier that he's growing too old for fighting and he wants to improve relations with the Montagues. Now Capulet is ready to take out the white flag and say, right, let's call it quits and have some peace. But you can see that obviously the tensions that exist between the families, like Tybalt's always ready to kill. These type of things will be very hard to ensure that there's peace between the two families this early in the play. Okay? And then if we move further on with the question, is it this one? Oops. Okay. He does not want to spoil or damage his reputation or spoil the atmosphere at the ball. Okay, again, we must remember when we are hosting parties, we do not like any fights or anything to go wrong, because obviously a good, nice party is a clear indication of being a good host, and people would like to come back to your parties. So, now very quickly, getting back to the question itself, the question asks for two possible reasons. We've given you 4. You just need to answer with 2 possible reasons, right? So if we move further on, and we go to B. Now this is 2.4b. This is the second part of the question, right? Remember your numbering when you have a question like this. Tybalt does not fight Romeo at the ball. What are the 3 consequences of this the next day? Now let's look at this question again. We're looking at Tybalt, right? He does not want to fight Romeo. Well, it's not that he does not want to fight Romeo. He cannot fight Romeo at the present time because his uncle pacifies him and says to him, no, 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 we will not have this here now. Just hold on, right? And then we want to know now, what are the 3 consequences of this the next day? So the question's asking now, because this fight didn't happen at the ball, what happens the next day? There are 3 3 or more important things that happen because this fight didn't take place on this day. Right? So if we go on and we look at the answer, remember it's 3 marks, so you need 3 points. Okay? So very quickly, the next day now, this happens the next day. The consequences of this fight not happening this day, what happens the next day? The next day we find that Tybalt challenges Romeo, right? He challenges Romeo to a duel, right? So he challenges Romeo to a duel, so he calls Romeo out for a fight, right? Tybalt fights and kills Mercutio, right? Now this is very, very important here, because this changes everything. Now that there's blood shed between the 2 families, right? Tybalt kills Mercutio when he is looking for Romeo. Now it's very important to note that Romeo did not want to fight Tybalt at this point in time, but unfortunately Mercutio is also a hot-headed character just like Tybalt and couldn't stand the insults that Tybalt was throwing at Romeo, so he decided to take Romeo on, right? And that's what happens. And now remember, Mercutio is a friend of Romeo's, right? And now because Tybalt kills Mercutio, who is Romeo's friend, Romeo reacts and he kills Tybalt. This is part of his revenge, right? And hence he is banished for doing that. The prince banishes him because he is obviously not allowed to kill, right? And now this will obviously make the feud between the 2 families much more drastic, where families now are going to start killing each other because now they've killed one another, and cousins or whatever. Remember, Tybalt is the cousin of Juliet, his Lady Capulet's nephew, right? So then very quickly now, it's very, very important that the question is asking, we go back quickly to the question, right? The question is asking, what does Tybalt does not fight Romeo at the ball, right? So it's giving us that information. What are the 3 consequences of this the next day? So they're not asking you for something that's present, they're asking you what happens in the future. Obviously, you would have had to read the text further on to know. Remember, when you are given an extract, you're not necessarily restricted to questions based on that extract. That is why you have to first start by putting the extract into context. So you know what happened before, what's happening in the extract, and what happened after, because that's how the questions come along, basically, when we are answering a contextual question. Okay, so moving on to the next question now, 2.5. Is the following statement, right, is the following statement true or false? Write true or false and quote no more than 2 lines from the extract to prove your answer. I'm going to repeat that question because it's a mouthful, right? Is the following statement true or false? Write true or false. Remember, it's like multiple choice. You can't choose both. You have to either choose true or false, right? And quote no more than 2 lines from the extract to prove your answer. They're already telling you the quote is 2 lines long. So if you go more than 2 lines, it means that you're punishing yourself. Okay, so if we look at it now, Romeo has a good reputation in Verona. That is the statement that you have to say whether it is true or false. Romeo has a good reputation in Verona. Now, if you say true or false, you have to make sure that you find the answer in the extract, right? So if we go now and we look at the answer, right? The answer is true, right? Yes, it's true. Romeo has a good reputation in Verona, right? So Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. Who do you think says this? Yes, it's Lord Capulet in the extract that's given to you that says this to Tybalt, to say to him that there's no need for us to fear Romeo because Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. It's to say that he is not a bad fellow. He's well-governed, he's got skills, he's well brought up and that type of thing, that there's no need to fear him, right? So that's very, very important. And remember, when we are quoting from an extract, you make sure that your quote is in inverted commas to say that it has come from the extract. Okay, and remember, it's 2 marks. You get 1 mark for true, and the second mark goes towards the quote. Also remember that if you got this as false, if you decided to say that the answer was false, and you had the quote right, unfortunately, you will lose both marks. Because if this first part is wrong, the second part automatically is wrong. Okay, moving on to the next question, 2.6. If you were the stage director of the play, right? Let's look at that again. If you were the stage director of the play, what would you tell the guests, right? So we're looking at the guests to do while Tybalt and Capulet are arguing. Now we first need to figure out who is the stage director. If you think about movies and plays, all these have directors, right? Most companies have directors who tell companies what it is they should do. So if we look at stage directors are the directors on stage that come on and tell the actors and the actresses what the expectations of them are, what it is that they should be doing, where they should be standing, their facial expressions, the tone, whatever it is that affects the play, or the time in which the play is being produced, or whatever the scene, the setup, whatever it is, that is the duty of a stage director, to basically tell the actors there and the actresses what the expectation of them is, what it is they are supposed to be doing whilst they are there in front of the camera, right? Now, we're looking at the guests now. We're not looking at any of the main characters in the play. We're looking at the guests, the insignificant people that are around the room, obviously doing whatever it is they do. Now, if you are a stage director, remember, Tybalt and Capulet are arguing privately, right? They are basically chatting to each other privately, so nobody else can necessarily hear their conversation. They're not loud, and everybody around them cannot hear what it is that they are arguing about. So, what would the answer be then? Right? If we look at the answer very quickly, we see that they would be talking, dancing, eating, drinking, enjoying the ball. So it would be as though they are totally oblivious of what's happening between Tybalt and Capulet. So I hope that makes sense there, because basically, let's just quickly go back. If you were the stage director of the play, what would you tell the guests to do while Tybalt and the Capulets are arguing? Right? Remember, it's just 1 mark, so you just need to make 1 point. Okay? So, and it's very easy. If you think about it as a director of a play, of a movie, even of a company, what is the job of the director? The director of any company, of any play, of any movie is to basically tell the workers or the actors or the actresses or all the people that are involved in the production what it is that each one of them should actually do. Okay. Have you ever been invited to a ball, Mpumi?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it's quite fascinating. I actually haven't been to one myself, but unfortunately I missed an opportunity.
Oh.
But I think it would be actually quite interesting to attend one of these. It's just this ball gowns that actually just get to me.
Wow.
All right. So, let's go further on. Okay, 2.7. Is Capulet fair in supporting Romeo over his nephew Tybalt? Discuss your view. Now, this is a very, very interesting question, very important, very different, right? The response as well is very different. Let's go back and look at it, right? Is Capulet fair, right, in supporting Romeo over his nephew Tybalt? Discuss your view. Now, when questions end with discuss your view, very quickly we know that discuss your view is an open-ended question. An open-ended question means that they are asking you for your personal view. But remember, your personal view has to align itself with the text. You have to come back to the text. You have to make sure that your answer is based on the text. And the text is Romeo and Juliet, right? So let's go back and look at the answer very quickly. Right. Again, it says it's open-ended, as I explained, remember? So when we have open-ended questions, we can have a yes response and a no. Okay? So you can see there, it's yes or it's no. But your yes or no is not awarded any marks, right? The substantiation you give to support the yes or no is what actually gives you the final mark. So if we look at yes, one has to prevent violence if possible. He was having a formal function and wanted to impress Paris. As we said earlier on, you see, we're repeating ourselves. Capulet did not want anything to go wrong at his function because he was hosting the function. And his prospective future son-in-law, Paris, was there, and he wanted to make a good impression on Paris. So yes, he wanted to stop any fight from happening so that his function wouldn't be disrupted and that he would actually go on to impress Paris. And then the no response. Remember, it says or. And you can't be a fence sitter and say yes or no. Yes and no, at least. You have to choose. Either it's yes or it's no. It's like your argumentative type of essays, where you have to choose. It's either you're sitting on this side of the fence or on that side, right? So no. One should always be loyal and not prefer outsiders over family. So this is talking about loyalty to family members, to ensure that now you support, even if your family member is wrong, like Tybalt is wrong here in trying to pick a fight with Romeo, although Romeo as well is wrong in gate crashing the party, but it is wrong now to say you side with your family over what's right. Okay, now moving on to 2.8.
Okay, Sima,
Yes.
you know what I think? Before we go on to 2.8, I think we should allow us to go drink water and allow the mindsetters at home to choose the competition to choose any number between 0 and 9. But before that, guys, let me just send a few shout-outs to the guys that are watching the show right now. Puti Libukhile Lukolwane, Mzwandile Mtembu, Sean Lukele, Musima Sitati, Nzako Chauke, Glenn Wood, Twala, Mzokona, Hopewell. Shout out to you guys. I can see your likes right over there on our recent post. But right now though, guys, let's just take a quick break, and when we come back, I will be explaining to you about how to go about entering the competition that we are running on the show. Welcome back from the break, Mindsetters. It is still the winter school revision for the exams, and as promised before the break, I told you that, guys, one of you could be winning this C9 CD. So now what happens is you have to enter on our website on mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock. That is the name of the competition. And speaking of the competition, Sima, can you please point for me the last digit on our number of likes on Facebook? See, guys, that is number 7. So that is our current lucky number. It can change. Anything is possible. So please get your friends to like us on Facebook. Who knows? Maybe you chose 3 and you wanted to go to 3. So get as many friends as possible to like us on Facebook so they can get to your favorite lucky number. Remember, you choose between 0 and 9. Now, speaking of which, guys, at the end of the show, we will be giving away this cool bag. So it has nice bags in it where you can put in your CDs and everything like that to put it all neat and together. But right now, though, Sima, are you ready to take us through Juliet Love?
Yes, now the brilliant ones coming up, right?
Yes.
Getting back to Romeo and Juliet. Okay, we are on question 2.8, right? 2.8, Romeo and Juliet fall in love with each other at first sight. Give your views on whether this is true love. Tommy, do you believe in love at first sight?
It depends. Well, yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I think so.
What
yeah.
is love at first sight? I don't know. I don't believe in love at first sight, unfortunately. I've been called a pessimist about it, but
Okay.
But what is it that is there sparks? Is there fireworks? I believe there's a whole range of atmospheric pressure even that changes.
Well, I personally think that when you like someone for the first time, you don't even know them that much, but when you look at them, you feel there's a bit of connection between you guys, and that's love at first sight for me.
So it's a physical attraction then.
Sometimes it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the emotional and all the other attraction comes on later on.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so I maybe I don't know, old-fashioned. I prefer to get to know the person better than to just see what you're looking at, and obviously, well,
For some people, it actually does work, hey?
well, I read
Yeah.
somewhere that everybody has a love at first sight experience. Maybe I have that with animals. I
Oh.
love dogs, so maybe my love at
Yeah.
first sight was with the puppy. Okay, so moving on to the question now, very quickly. Romeo and Juliet fall in love with each other at first sight. So they're falling in love now with each other. Thank God, with each other. And at first sight. At first sight means that when they first look at each other, they are mesmerized. They decide, he's the one for me. And she decides, oh, I'm sorry, she says that. And he says, now, she's the one for me. So basically, this is a statement, right? Remember, questions can occur like this, where they give you a statement and then they ask you a question. The statement again is, Romeo and Juliet fall in love with each other at first sight. Now, give your views on whether this is true love. Right? The definition of true love is very difficult to actually answer. I mean, even Shakespeare, Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds, also speaks of true love there. Right? Now, if we go on and we look at the answer here, right? Remember, this is a 2-mark question. Again, it is an open-ended question. An open-ended question means that there's a yes and there's a no answer, right? And you obviously have to decide which side of the fence you're sitting. Do you agree with the question or do you disagree with the question? Now, looking again, open-ended, yes, there is a deeper spiritual connection that draws them together. I personally disagree. But then, obviously, if you are that type of person that looks and falls in love, you would obviously agree with this. And then there's a no. It is merely an infatuation. He was just in love with Rosalind, so he cannot really be in love with another girl. This is very, very important to note, that Romeo was in love with Rosalind at the point that he attended this ball. And remember, we spoke about this earlier. He attended the ball in the hope of seeing Rosalind so that he could show her off to his friends, so that they could see how beautiful she was, whereas his friends brought him to the ball in the hope that he would fall in love with another young lady, or get to see that there's so many other beautiful options out there, and he would forget about Rosalind. But little did they expect that he would fall in love with a Capulet, which would obviously now ruin the friendship. Okay, so open-ended, remember, it's basically your view, your opinion, but you must bring it back to the text. If it's yes, You must substantiate it with the text. Like here, there's a deeper spiritual connection that draws them together. We find that later on when we see them chatting with each other over the balcony scene and all of that, we find that Romeo and Juliet are connecting. There is a connection that is deeper than the normal one we would see between people. And then this is where I fall actually, is where how can a man or a boy of 14 years of age suddenly now be infatuated with Rosalind and fall in love with Juliet 2 minutes later? I don't know. Maybe it happens, I don't know. Okay, moving on. So now we are going on to the next extract, right? And the next extract is an extract that happens between Juliet and her mother, Lady Capulet, and it's the night before Juliet's wedding to Paris. Okay, it's very important to note. It's Act 4, Scene 2. Remember, I said to you that you must always look at the bottom because these actually give you an indication as to where the extract is coming out from. Now, at this point in the play, we have to remember that Juliet is being forced to marry Paris. She would love to marry Romeo. But here she's actually forced to marry Paris, and she's very upset because despite her protests and telling her father, no, I'm not in love with him, don't want to marry him, her father insists that he's the perfect suitor for her and she will marry him. Okay, so moving on now to the questions. Aha! Match column A with column B. These are marks for free, right? But not necessarily. Some of them are a bit catchy, right? If you look at it now, match the names in column A, this is column A, here, with the descriptions in column B. So they give you 4 names here. It's Benvolio, Lady Capulet, the nurse, and Mercutio. And on this side, we've got A, related to the prince, B, Romeo's cousin, C, Montague's brother, D, Tybalt's aunt, and E, takes care of Juliet, right? Now, if we look at Benvolio, who is Benvolio in the play? Benvolio is actually the cousin of Romeo. I bet you some of you are thinking, no, it's Mercutio, but it's wrong. Mercutio is Romeo's friend, not cousin. Benvolio is Romeo's cousin. Then Lady Capulet. Lady Capulet is the aunt of Tybalt. Remember we mentioned this earlier on? Lady Capulet is the aunt of Tybalt. So he is Juliet's maternal cousin from her mother's side, right? We go on to the nurse. This is an easy one. This is for free. The nurse is actually the person that takes care of Juliet. Okay? And then obviously Mercutio now becomes a relative of the prince. But he is a relative of the prince. He doesn't become one now because of the multiple choice. Okay, so please remember, it's very, very important for you to know your characters, know who their relations are with, who are friends, who's a cousin, who's the mother, who's the nurse, who's the nanny. You need to know all of these when you're answering Romeo and Juliet so you don't get these type of match column A with column B wrong. The tricky one here is the Benvolio and the Mercutio, right? I know a lot of you would have went and said, oh, Mercutio could have been the cousin of Romeo, but he's not. He's actually Romeo's friend. Benvolio is a blood cousin of Romeo. Okay, let's just take that into cognizance when we are answering this question. And remember, this is 4 marks, right? 4 marks that you could so easily gain by just knowing who's related to who and who's friendly with who and that type of thing. So just bear in mind, remember the questions might change, the type of questions may change. It won't necessarily be the same type of questions at the end of this year. You know, this one is based on relatives. You know, you never know what's going to come out at the end of the year. So let's move on. Question 3.2, right? Now again, we're starting with a statement and thereafter we have a question. Juliet describes herself as cross and full of sin in line 5. She is referring to a recent argument with her father, right? What did they argue about? State 2 points. Now, let's read it again, just so that we get it. It's a mouthful. Juliet describes herself as cross and full of sin in line 5. Now, cross literally could mean angry, isn't it? And then, if you look at it, and full of sin, she has already married Romeo. Romeo is already her husband. So she's now going to sin and marry Paris because she's already married to Romeo. right, in line 5. So she's referring to a recent argument with her father. What did they argue about? This is the main point here. What did they argue about? State 2 points. Remember, it's not in the extract. The extract that we are given is only a conversation between Juliet and Lady Capulet, where Lady Capulet basically says to her, go and rest, tomorrow is your big day. But now, the question is asking, what did they argue about? State 2 points. The question is taking you out of the extract. So the question, you need to know, contextualize. You need to actually contextualize the text, so that you figure out what happened before and what happened after. Now this is before the text, right? So basically now let's look at the answer. If we look at the answer, right? Her father told her to marry Paris, which we know he's been trying to score points, if you want to call it that, with Paris right from the outset, where he's trying to impress Paris even at the ball, right? So her father told her to marry Paris, and she refused to marry him and begged him to postpone the wedding. Now he won't have that, because he wants Paris as his son-in-law, and Paris, remember, is a friend of the prince, so it carries more weight, right, in terms of position and society and that type of thing. So it's very, very important to note that this is actually a question that comes out of the extract, and you need to actually know what happened before the conversation between Juliet and Lady Capulet in order to answer this question. And also remember that it starts off with a statement, and then it goes on further to ask you for the answers. Moving on. 3.3. What does Juliet mean by have your hands full in line 12? Right? Have your hands full. So what does it mean by this? And it's there in line 12. Now if we go back to the extract, right? And we very quickly go to line 12. There's 10, 11, 12. Right? For I am sure you have your hands full, all. Right? This is said by Juliet. And she's saying this to her mother. She's saying to her mother that I'm sure you're quite occupied at this point in time, being the mother of the bride, and obviously you will have a lot of things to do. So, what does Juliet mean by this when she says it to her mother, specifically under these circumstances and within this context? Now, if we go back and we look at the answer, we see Lady Capulet will be very busy preparing for Juliet's wedding. And that's what the mother of the bride does. She's frantic about preparing for a wedding. Have you ever seen a mother of a bride relaxed?
No.
A mother of the bride is the person you would see that's always up and about, running around, trying to make sure that everything is done and in order. And this was the expectation of Lady Capulet from Juliet at this point in the play. Okay, remember we are talking about a play now, and it's very good when you look at these questions and these answers and you try and create some sort of image in your head of a mother running around trying to prepare stuff for her daughter's wedding, and then you sort of get the feel of the play and you understand exactly what it is that is being the expectation of the director of the play, right? And then we move on to the next question. And this is a multiple choice question. These questions can also be quite tricky if you are not familiar with the text, right? When I say the text, I mean the play as a whole, okay? Now if we look here, 3.4 says choose the correct answer. So you have to choose one answer only choose the correct answer to complete the following sentence. Juliet's mother thinks that Juliet needs to rest because. Now there's A, B, C, D. Please do not give your markers a multiple choice answer. Do not choose A and B and then decide they can choose one and it will be the right answer. It does not work like that. You choose one answer, right? So, is the answer A? She has worked very hard. Do you think Juliet has worked very hard? I don't think so. I think she's in a panic mode now because she's getting married to a second husband, right? B, is she overexcited about the wedding? Do you think Juliet is excited about this wedding? I don't think so. She's not happy to marry Paris, remember? Then C, she has not slept well lately. Did anybody tell us in the play that Juliet has not been sleeping well, apart from a little meetings with Romeo over the balcony? No, but still it's not a good enough reason for her mother to send her to sleep early. Remember, her mother does not know of her meetings with Romeo, so she doesn't know that she's not sleeping well lately. Then D, she's getting married the next day. Every mother wants her daughter to look nice rested on the day of her wedding, right? So this is the reason why Juliet's mother wants Juliet to rest, because she wants her to look beautiful the next day, not have these dark grey or brown bags under your eyes like the way I have, but I sleep very well. Okay, so moving on from here, this question, you have to look at all the options and then question it the way we have, right? Has she worked hard during the day? No, we know that she's panicked because she's marrying Paris now. Is she overexcited about the wedding? We know she's definitely not excited about the wedding, right? And has she not slept well lately? Well, the mother does not know she hasn't been sleeping well. Okay, and then she is getting married the next day. That is the reason she's getting married the next day. So, Pumi, are we going to take a quick break now?
Yes, we are taking a quick break, guys. Please remember to like us on Facebook on mindset.co.za/learn/extra/went to school in order for you to participate on the show. I have this exciting and interesting revision exam package for you guys, so I will be explaining it right towards the end of the show. But right now, though, let's take a break. We'll be back after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from an ad break. This is the last segment of English First Additional Language with Sima. Now, guys, before the ad break, I told you that we are running this competition, and I'm quickly going to ask Sima to please refresh so that we can check the number of likes right now and see who could be the lucky winner.
No, I didn't do it.
Okay, I think it's... Da-da-da-da. Okay. All right then, guys. Remember, if you didn't enter, please make sure that you enter it quickly right there on our address. It is mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock. So right now we are stopping the clock. Let's refresh. Okay, yes, we do have number 8. So everybody that entered number 8, congratulations, because you are standing a chance of winning this nice CD right over here by C9. All right, thanking Soul Candy for giving us these nice and beautiful CDs right over there. I'm sure you guys are going to love and enjoy them. And a little bit later, before the end of the show, we'll be giving you this nice CD bag where you can put all of your CDs right there and save. Thanking the Mindsetters as well for liking our new show called Mindset Connection on Facebook. Please, guys, like it, because tomorrow at 7:15 in the evening, we will be talking about a body image. So please interact with us right now on the page so that tomorrow we can discuss it furthermore. Right now, Sima, let's take it away.
Yes, getting back to Romeo and Juliet. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly look at the literary essay question, because we do not have a lot of time left to continue with the contextual, but I thought it was important for you to actually understand what a literary essay question asks of you, right? Remember, we are doing the November 2012 exam paper that was written last year, right? So let's just quickly look at the question. In the play Romeo and Juliet, both Romeo's and Juliet's lives are affected by other characters. So we're looking at the characters Romeo and Juliet's lives affected by other characters, right? So now, write an essay showing how Romeo and Juliet are affected by the actions and advice of others. So, again, affected by actions and advice of others. Right? In your answer, you may discuss the following. Now, remember, the first part of the question very clearly tells you what the question's all about. It says to you, in the play Romeo and Juliet, both Romeo's and Juliet's lives. It's talking about how their the play unfolds based on their lives, right? Are affected by other characters. The other characters are referenced to people like Tybalt, Mercutio, the nurse, Lady Capulet, the father, Romeo's mother and father, and all of that, right? Now write an essay showing how Romeo and Juliet are affected by the actions and advice of others. Now, remember, when we say actions and advice, remember, let me give you an example very quickly. If you're talking about actions, remember Tybalt, the hot-headed Tybalt, wanted to duel with Romeo, and he couldn't find Romeo, and then he managed to spark a fight with Mercutio, and he killed Mercutio. And that action there resulted in Romeo fighting Tybalt out of anger, and unfortunately Tybalt dies at the hands of Romeo. And now it's because of actions that has happened, right? And then remember advice. If you look at earlier on in the play where Romeo's friends advise him to go to the Capulets' ball, but not to go and find Rosalind, to find somebody else more suited for him, and that's where he finds and meets Juliet, who's his destined fate, right? So this is all the actions through advice. But here they give you 3 bullets in which they expect you to actually look into these 3 questions when you are answering your essay question. Remember, your literary essay question must conform to the formats of language and grammar. You must ensure that you have paragraphs, you have ideas in your paragraphs, you have a main sentence, you have a topic. And also remember that when you are describing characters and you say that Tybalt, for instance, like we did earlier on, was an aggressive, angry young man, you need to substantiate it with the text. You need to say, right, he is angry, and then you can say, because, you are saying this because during the ball, he was angry and he wanted to kill Romeo immediately. So that goes to show how hot-headed he is and how short-tempered he is, and that he can actually go the route of actually killing somebody, you know, just like that, without even thinking about it. So remember, when you describe a character, you must make sure there is evidence, a scenario or an incident that has taken place in the play that can support your answer. Right? That's very, very important. Now let's look at the 3 bullets that we have here. Right? How Romeo and Juliet are affected by the actions of Mercutio and Tybalt. Right? Now we are looking at these 2 characters here, and we've already spoken about it. Remember, Mercutio is Romeo's friend, and Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. So they are already the Capulets and the Montagues at war here, and now we find that Romeo and Juliet's lives are affected by them. How are they affected? The actions, we'll look at the answers in order just now. Then we look at how Juliet's parents, right? Juliet's parents and the nurse influence her life. Remember, in those days, the ladies spoke very little. You couldn't have an opinion. You couldn't really do much. You couldn't decide to fall in love and get married, especially if you came from an esteemed, well-to-do family in society. So Juliet had to be very careful about that. So her parents and the nurse. Remember, the nurse is always there. The nurse is somebody that has been there for her all the time, has actually helped and assisted with bringing Juliet up. So she's also advised Juliet at many points in her life on what she should do and what she shouldn't, and that type of thing. She even runs amok with Juliet, and she teases her about Romeo in an extract in Romeo and Juliet, right? And then if we go on, further on, we see how Friar Lawrence, right? Now Friar Lawrence is a friend of Romeo's, right? Has an impact on Romeo's and Juliet's lives. If you think about it, Friar Lawrence tries in an effort to get Romeo and Juliet together, but his efforts fail him because it results in the death of both Romeo and Juliet. Remember, he gives Juliet a potion which she can take, and she would look at it, would appear as though she is dead, and they would obviously build a tomb for her and send her off, and then Romeo would arrive by then, and the hope was by Friar Lawrence is that they would get together and leave, and nobody would know the better. But his news to Romeo never reaches him, and then Romeo and Juliet unfortunately believe that each other's dead, and Romeo brings a vial of poison along with him, and he sees the dead Juliet lying in the coffin, and he drinks it, so thinking that she's dead. And then you see Juliet, who wakes up and she finds this dead Romeo next to her, you know, and she's besides herself, and then she takes a dagger and she stabs herself to death. So it's very, very important that you see it's because of the actions and advice of others, it leads to this tragedy at the end of the play where we find Romeo and Juliet no longer, right? Remember as well, the word length for this is 250 to 300 words. It's very, very important that you actually stick to this word count and allocation, because you have to try and fit in so many points in there, and if you go on to writing 500 words or so, it's going to be a problem, because then the markers are not going to necessarily go on to mark so much. And also, if you say very little, remember, you're not going to get the full marks, which is 35 marks that has been awarded to this question. So if we quickly look at the answer now, right? the answer here, how Romeo's and Juliet are affected by the actions of Mercutio and Tybalt. Tybalt's hatred, right? For Tybalt's hatred, that's a very strong word there, but it is true. Tybalt's hatred for all the Montagues drive him to challenge Romeo to a duel after Capulet has forbidden fighting at the ball, right? Remember, Capulet was ready to make peace, okay? Mercutio's fight with Tybalt leads to Romeo's banishment as Romeo kills Tybalt to avenge Mercutio's death. So Romeo couldn't even stay in the same city, Verona, and be with Juliet and meet with her whenever he felt like, because now he was banished because he killed Tybalt, who killed Mercutio, his friend. It was all a series of actions that led to him actually being banished, okay? Then if we move on further and we look at how Juliet's parents and the nurse influenced her life, Juliet does not have a close relationship with her parents. Remember, she has a nanny that's bringing her up, so she basically confides in the nanny, the nurse that is, and she has this relationship with the nurse that she should have actually had with her mother, okay? So then she's willing to obey her parents and marry Paris. This changes when she meets Romeo. So initially when we first introduced to the ball, we find that when Lord Capulet speaks to Juliet and he mentions Paris, that Juliet is not necessarily unhappy, and she says to him that she would consider it. And that is why Capulet is so full of hope at the ball that Juliet and Paris would actually meet and fall in love and get married, because Juliet has said to him that she would think about it and she would see him and she would decide. So there was hope, a glimmer of hope there that was unfortunately destroyed by Romeo when Juliet met Romeo. Okay, and then we go on to see the nurse joins forces, right, with Lady Capulet in recommending Paris as a good prospective husband. Juliet seems quite willing to look to like. It's very important to note here, this is based on the advice. The mother and the nurse is basically channeling Juliet into the direction of seeing Paris as the perfect suitor for herself. So here again we find that this is based on the advice. Remember, we are looking at actions and advice. That was what the question was asking us. How did the actions and the advice of the other characters influence Romeo and Juliet, right? Influence the lives of Romeo and Juliet. And then if we go further down, right? When learning of Romeo and Juliet's romance, the nurse becomes Juliet's willing ally, acting as the go-between and the messenger. Now we see that the nurse suddenly changes her attitude. Initially, she agrees with Lady Capulet and says that, you know what, Paris is the perfect suitor for Juliet. But now we find that she's changed her mind and she says, okay, fine, we'll go ahead with this. And being an ally for Juliet meant that she would carry messages across to Romeo and that type of thing. So she supported Juliet in her relationship with Romeo at the outset, right? The Capulet's decision to hasten the marriage between Paris and Juliet has disastrous consequences. So here we see, you know, like all mothers and fathers, we think we know what's best for our children, and we find the perfect suitor and decide you will marry this suitor because he is perfect with A, B, C, and whatever else. But we don't see what our children want. And this is exactly what happened with the Capulets, where they did not want to listen to Juliet and decide whether Juliet had the right to make a choice, right? And they forced the issue of Juliet being married to Paris, and consequently that resulted in the death of Juliet. So they lost a child being forceful in trying to insist that Juliet marry Paris, because they thought that Paris was the ideal suitor for Juliet. Okay, and then quickly we can wrap up here looking at the next one, how Friar Lawrence has an impact on Romeo and Juliet's life. Friar Lawrence has the biggest impact, right? Where his actions and his advice actually, not willingly, he didn't decide it in the hope of them killing themselves, but unfortunately his advice and his actions have resulted in them actually dying. So you remember initially he secretly married them to each other, and now sadly at the end of the play, because the messages could not go through, it ended in a tragedy where Romeo and Juliet basically killed themselves.
Oh, that's so sad. Thank you so much, Sima.
No,
Great stuff. All right, then, guys, let me quickly announce the winner for the competition today. Congratulations to France, and congratulations for winning the CD by C9. And, of course, congratulations to Prakesh for winning this CD case. Congratulations, guys. And please do remember that you can always order this nice package from Mindset. It has all the revision questions and a memorandum. So please make sure that you do stay tuned with us right up until the end of our revision shows. Right now, guys, it is now time to love and leave you and wish you a very good luck with your exams. Bye-bye.